Hi, everybody. This is Otto Lee again, and welcome to listening to our broadcast. Today, we are very excited to have a good friend of ours on the San Jose City Council representing District 2, our council member, Sergio Jimenez. Sergio, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Best day of my life, Otto. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for coming to speak with us. And there's some really exciting news going on in San Jose. Obviously, lots of things going on. But the one that I want to talk about today is regarding that a bit of a surprising to me, the support of the upcoming Proposition 16, which used to be called the ACA 5,
Yeah.
to give Prop 209 that was passed about a quarter century ago to not allow affirmative action of consideration of race and sex in our higher education, in our government contracting and hiring. So it's certainly a great victory for our civil rights community, but I certainly would love to hear more from you why you voted for Prop 16, but also how your personal story and background that you might want to tell us.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate the question. A little bit of the context of Prop 16 in my mind, it got me to think back to the early 90s. I graduated in high school in 1994. Around that time, I think 94 and specifically 96, we had the three strikes laws that came down that decimated many communities of color. Having worked in the public defender's office, I saw how that played out and really put a lot of people in prison, quite frankly. In addition to that, we had obviously Prop 209, which Prop 16 seeks to sort of address. And then we had Prop 187, if you remember that, right? Really attacking our immigrant community. So,
Yes.
so these laws, I saw them very similarly, all coming from Pete Wilson.
Yes.
And so a Republican. And so when this came before us, I thought it was important to do what we could as a council to really correct the wrongs that have been made to many communities. And the unfortunate reality and the statistics have shown that under Prop 209, many communities haven't fared very well. And in my mind, we see that something is successful when it really helps everyone, but unfortunately, it really has decimated the ability for some communities to really be included in the process and really use their experience, the diverse experience, life experience to qualify for certain things such as admissions to universities.
Correct. And as we all know, and I myself have told the story previously about my own experience when I was going to law school at Hastings through the LEOP, Legal Education Opportunity Program. I was not only able to help me get admitted to school, but providing me the whole year of pretty intense extra tutoring to make sure that students from these type of a background have a better chance to succeed. Not every one of our classmates that went through LEOP made it through even first year, for example. Many of us did make it, and as a matter of fact, I still have good friends that I keep in touch with that we met at that program and are extremely successful attorneys these days.
Wonderful. And the thing that comes to mind as you're talking is just really the foundational piece for me is just an opportunity, right, to compete.
Right. That's right.
Not everyone, obviously, some of these tests that have been resoundingly found to not be as inclusive and as well-rounded as they should be in trying to figure out which students are going to succeed or not. And really just using your life experiences and your experience as a person of color as but one sort of thing that gets to get taken into account. It's not everything, right? You still need to be a top performing student and do well and all that, but it's really just an opportunity, and I'm glad you were able to
That's, yeah, see, there's a few, I tell them the kind of the change or fake news or facts that's been altered in this discussion, which is unfortunate because to me, when we have honest debate, we need the facts being laid out.
Correct.
I'll have the different sets of facts. And one of which is the concern that, oh, if you allow these type of less than qualified individuals to get into schools, then you have unqualified doctors, unqualified architects, unqualified lawyers. And that can be further from the truth because at the end of the day, to pass the class, there is no any type of arrangement that you could score higher by being of a different background. The test is everybody, right? So what is the bar exam? What is the medical board? What is for architects, right? You still have to pass those very difficult exams,
Right.
And that's exactly what at the end of the day, that really matters. And so you give the opportunity to do it, but folks still have to, work really, really hard. And I certainly have gone through it and learned it the hard way, to work extra hard to take that bar exam and pass it.
Yeah.
By having the opportunity to even have the ability to try, that's what this program is about. And the
Yeah.
other thing, as you know, is people talk about quota, right? As we all know, with the Bakke case from the United States Supreme Court, it made it very clear that affirmative action is not quota. Those are two separate things. Quota is actually illegal.
Right.
Much, but you see, like the opponent of affirmative action will keep bringing back quota as the
Correct.
rationale. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah, sorry, the video, I didn't know if you were done. So, but yes, I totally agree with you. And the other thing I think during the debate on Tuesday, we had certainly a lot of people on the line, and what was concerning to me is that oftentimes the type of affirmative action that, quite frankly, has been in practice for many years, sometimes we don't talk about it, but the legacy admissions, right? Simply because your parents or relatives went to this particular college, you get preferential treatment,
that's
right?
right.
That in and of itself is unequal and it's unacceptable in my mind. And then you think back to some of the celebrities recently that were, this pay to play type of setup, right? And so we know that the society we live in, certainly we've made a lot of progress, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And so I don't pretend to believe that we're in a world where everything's perfect. And so this, I think, decision and the vote from the city council really is an acknowledgement that we still have some work left to be done, and that we should give everyone opportunity to succeed.
Absolutely. And as you can have experienced, there's certainly a lot of divisions between the two sides of this issue. And some of those are being from the white or even Asian community. What are some of the points you would make when it comes to intersectionally and communicate with the between the Asian and Latino communities, try to work together for the causes that benefit all people of colors?
Yeah, I think at the expense of sounding a little radical here, I think the dominant sort of folks in our society for many years have, and it goes on to a less extent now, but in the future, the history of the United States has clearly shown that oftentimes the dominant folks in power tend to pit other groups sort of against each other. And so I think this is a remnant of that, right? Fighting for the scraps, while some other folks are benefiting tremendously from the current system and the way it's set up. And so, one thing that came to mind as many of the folks were making commentary during the public meeting this past Tuesday is just simply the fact that some of the stories that were shared are my story, right? Story of immigrants, people simply seeking a better life, better opportunities. And I think the challenge that I would like to break down and sort of resolve is an acknowledgement that simply because we're helping someone doesn't necessarily mean that we're taking something away from you, right?
It's not exactly.
And so I think often focusing on our similarities and unfortunately during the council meeting, it doesn't always lend itself to having those open and frank discussions and honest discussions, right? That I think we have more in common than different. And so I think building those bridges is vitally important because our stories are very much the same.
Well, and I also try to raise the point that if you really somehow think that this country is now equal, because some would say make the argument saying that, look, we have a black president of the United States, so if a black man could even accomplish being the president of the United States, that means we must be all equal and racism is no longer there. And as we have seen most recently between George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and now most recently of Jacob, all these shootings, and it's not like one area, right? It's everywhere in this country. The inequality, inequity is something that is pervasive in our community in so many ways on racism. And I hate to say it, but it seems like we've gone backwards, right? Like we're making progress, but it's the last few years we've certainly worked backwards. I'm not just only blaming on the white, the new president, but the fact that it's something that is so much needed. So this idea of so-called colorblind, and therefore we could just ignore the people's background, the race, and I don't think is really a way of moving toward our goal of this equal in everybody's eyes, because there's a difference between equality and equity, right? Those two things might sound similar, but it's very
Right, I agree.
yes.
And you know, there was an article that I read in preparation for the meeting on Tuesday. We were short of time, so I didn't really talk about the article, but it talked about this idea in our society that we are that the space from, you know, all this discrimination that we hear about, the black, you know, the black codes and slavery, you know, like it's a very linear path, and we just eventually naturally just, you know, like some of the laws of physics are going to get to a natural state of equality, unerringly, right? That, like there's no setbacks, and so, but the reality is, in my mind, and the author sort of pointed out that that is not the case, right? We need to put forward affirmative efforts to try to bring some of this stuff to the forefront. And in my mind, that is what passage of Prop 16, for example, will do, right? It's acknowledging some challenges that have existed and continue to exist. And how do we correct that, right? And so it doesn't just happen, we have to make it so. And that's what comes to mind for me. We're not there, and we're not naturally just going to get there by crossing our fingers and saying a prayer, right? We have to do the work.
Oh, and the number sometimes speaks for itself. Is when we have close to 40% Latinos in the state of California. When you look at the enrollment of UCs and CSU, it's less than 25%. That 15% gap is just ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And we really could see that. And you know, I don't want to name names, but you know, somebody have been quoted recently saying that, you know, Latino parents don't care about the kids' education or send them to college.
Further
Where that type of come from. But that's the type of negative stereotype that we need to get rid of, because it's not based on truth, and perpetuate these racial negative stereotypes.
Yeah.
And it goes the other way too. You know, there's always this a bit of a model minority myth that Asians are good with math. And when I tell people that I went through the career opportunity program, and people don't believe me almost, right? So it's exactly these inaccuracies, right? Because we are all unique. Everybody has so different background, and you can lump us together in any way. We need to work so hard together. Yes.
Totally agree. I totally agree. I think we you know, yeah. So I think you touched on everything that's so important, that we all care about the same things, and I think just acknowledging that and trying to lift each other up rather than putting people down.
Exactly. We need to
Pigeonholing them into one particular stereotype doesn't help.
and the last thing I do want to mention is, you know, when anybody thinks that, you know, the Asians don't get this, well, most recently, I think this president of ours calling us the Chinese virus and Kung flu and all those really horrifying terms. So we know that those issues still one alive, and we need to work together with all of us to fight these type of stereotypes. Now, on other areas, which is not that this is a hard issue, the next big issue, of course, is affordable housing. As you know, especially with COVID, really highlight the inequality of the services being provided. We know 4 zip codes that has the highest number of COVID victims and deaths on East Side in San Jose, which is, of course, lived by many minorities, especially Latinos and African Americans and some Asians as well. So we really need to build more affordable housing and affect so many people. How do you think the city and county could work better together to construct more affordable housing in your mind?
Yeah, I think, you know, as the city of San Jose, being one of the representatives here in this, the largest city in the county, I can tell you that part of our frustration sometimes is we feel that maybe other cities aren't pulling their weight, their own weight. And so I think the county and leaders like you once elected, really leaning on cities like Sunnyvale or other cities that could maybe step up and do a little bit more, I think is important. Obviously, the county with the Measure A funding, I think you all hold a lot of the purse strings as it relates to funding some of these projects. So you all, you know, in those leadership positions at the county as a supervisor, allowing those monies to be used in a very easy manner for some of these projects is going to be important.
Exactly. Sorry? That's on the red tapes, for example.
Correct. The use of users of the money. And then the other thing I think that we struggle with in the city of San Jose, and I suspect all communities do, is this challenge in trying to get community buy-in and recognition that we need more affordable housing, right? Unfortunately, the topic of discrimination, you know, that we just touched on with Prop 16 or Prop 209 really has been embedded in many other conversations. So for example, you hear affordable housing and it's very challenging to break down, and very necessary though, to break down the myths of you're bringing the poor people here, right?
Right.
and it's going to bring down my property value. It's going to increase crime, which
Exactly.
is just not true.
Right. I
Um,
mean, it's
so
NIMBYism.
those sort of things.
Yeah. That brought with fear, and even the terminology of affordable housing or or high density housing. A lot of times people think of that as like the projects in Chicago with truck infested and
Yeah,
10-story high. Well, for a lot of times, high density in our neighborhood is maybe only about 4 or 5 stories some
yeah,
ways.
I
Uh,
agree.
I do think that people need to be better understanding what it means, because at the end of the day, we don't have a lot of land being in Silicon Valley, and we do need infill development and getting people to be willing to live a little bit higher in the density and the height, and hopefully also encourage people to get out of the cars, right? I mean, I
Correct.
understand a little bit worry about public transportation, but again, just like anything else that will pass.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I can tell you from experience. I mean, my family, we were, I think, ahead of our times because my mom, single mom raising 6 kids, didn't own a car. We were on the bus. Uh,
wow.
but I grew up in a high density housing apartment complex
Right.
in which my bedroom was a living room floor, and we were a struggling family. And I can tell you that without having that hand up and allowing my mom to pay a little less rent,
Right.
uh, I wouldn't be in the position I'm in today, because that although we were poor, it gave me the
Right.
stability to thrive as a kid and now as an adult. And so I think we need to remember that quite frankly, some of these housing affordable housing units we're building may give rise to the next mayor of San Jose or the next senator, right? I mean, so I think we need to make sure everyone's able to thrive with the four walls and a roof that's very necessary.
Right. I mean, in Sunnyvale, we have a very active BMR, below market rate program.
Mhm.
I remember voting to increase it at the time. It was like, a dozen years ago to 12.5%, which is about 1 of 8 units has to be BMR. I believe San Jose at this point might be even higher. I think all that's great, but then once they moved to a new fee, and I think recently they voted to like get rid of the fee
Yeah.
altogether. Then you basically are just saying that, well, we're not going to build housing with build below market rate units. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because ultimately we really don't want the fees. We want the units built, right? That's
Correct. Correct.
goal. And I think we need to fight very hard in the future to make sure that these units are being built, because it really helps lift people's life. And we're not just talking about for rent units. Some of these are for sale units, which means it help people build their life and equity, right? Because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
life savings or the most wealth is from the appreciation of the house. Uh,
Correct. Correct.
Rent every month, as we know, is like throwing garbage. It's good to put a mortgage so that you actually are building equity. So I think these are the programs that we need to work long term for many folks, and of course for folks who are on the streets and underpasses, and they really need the temporary housing ASAP for transition to make that happen. Right.
I agree. I think those are all good points. And I think we need higher home ownership, and we need to do everything we can to get that done. So.
Yeah, 2008 was devastating with the mortgage crisis. A lot of people lost their home, and
Mhm.
painful for decades to come. People are afraid to buy, or they couldn't afford to buy anymore because housing is so expensive, hard to qualify. So we really need to get more people into owning their home, and that's exactly the goal that we need to work together.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Great. Well, again, thank you. The time has just gone by so quickly, Sergio.
Well, it does when you're having fun. So.
You're kidding. You just talk about really simple, easy issues, right? We solve the world's hunger at this point, right?
Well, if I can say something before you close it out, I just want to say that I very much appreciate you taking the time to reach out and have a conversation with folks like myself. I think that the role of county supervisors is so very important. We need people there with good morals, a good work ethic, that really have that want to keep the best in mind for the residents that they represent. And I have no doubt that once you're elected, you're going to do that. And so I'm very proud to have endorsed you, and so proud to support you. And I know that you're going to be a success. And election day, I look forward to celebrating with you.
Well, thank you. I look forward to working with you, because these are some seriously challenging times with not just COVID, but obviously the fire situation, and of course the budget deficit that we'll have to face for many, many months, if not years to come. So the county and city really need to work together. I mean, when you hear about a county and city and the lawsuits suing each other, it's the dumbest thing ever.
Not good.
taxpayer pulling the lawyers on both sides, right, and fighting. That doesn't make sense. And we really need good people like you to continue serving in the
Thank
city
you so much.
council. Right? And I look forward to that opportunity. And thank you so much for taking your time today to talk to us.
Thank you, Otto. Best of
And
luck.
she's,
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
all right, thank you. Good
Thank
job.
you.